The festive season has begun with gusto. Despite money worries, for most people, the mood is upbeat. In the first full-fledged post-pandemic celebration of festivals across India, people are out and about and willing to travel and visit each other. Claiming to be back at pre-COVID levels, India's leading ride-hailing app Uber says it's time to stop talking of recovery and talk of growth instead. To offer us the big picture view on growth prospects, customer expectations in a changed world, brand identity, new initiatives and the competitive landscape, I'm joined by Prabhjeet Singh. He's the president of Uber India, also responsible for the mobility business in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. Prabhjeet, thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me on the show, Anuradha. I'm a huge fan.
That's good to hear. Let's start by talking about growth. I have some numbers that I have seen, and where it comes to auto and moto, which is, I guess, bikes.
That's right.
You've got some 220% increase over January 2020 and 120% increase again over January 2020 for moto. So this is low-cost mobility. Give me the picture here for growth, explain this, and then let's move to cars.
So, Anuradha, Uber's in the business of moving people from point A to point B. And when the cities shut down, Uber also came to a halt. But as cities have opened up and people have started moving out, we have also been on standby and are now seeing resurgent rebound in the business. We are seeing not just growth across the platform, but particularly certain categories. So, for example, as you mentioned, low-cost solutions have absolutely taken off, particularly post the pandemic. Three-wheelers and two-wheelers. This is how, by the way, majority of the country actually travels. They don't travel by air-conditioned cars, which was originally how Uber entered the market and how most of our early consumers know us as. So we are seeing multiple folds of growth on three-wheelers and two-wheelers. Large part of that is driven by these are affordable solutions. They're also solving a core consumer need of being able to get three-wheeler, two-wheeler at a doorstep, which otherwise you would not be able to do. We are also seeing, by the way, similar strong growth on other segments, for example, intercity.
What is growth looking like in your core business or the first offering, which I would guess is still the lion's share of your revenues, isn't it? And that is the taxis, the cars.
So the way we look at the business, Anuradha, is cars, auto and moto. And then there are new initiatives which I'm happy to talk about, which we have recently piloted. Now in the core cars business, the bulk of the business is in moving people within a city from point A to point B. Could be for commute use cases, could be for recreation use cases,
So what's the growth you're seeing there?
So we are seeing that that segment is now just shy of full recovery pre-pandemic. It is very much correlated to whether offices have opened up and whether commuters are back to using the service for the same frequency and going to office that often. So we are seeing now that just shy of full recovery, while other categories have actually are all in the growth phase now.
Right. So, and if you were to give me a sense of which category contributes what to your revenues, that would help, even if you're not going to give me any direct numbers.
I'll give you a fun fact, Anuradha, which I would imagine many of your viewers may not know. Today, Uber in India does more trips in terms of volume on three-wheelers and two-wheelers than on four-wheelers. So that gives you a rough sense of where the volume split is. And when it comes to value, obviously the trips on a car-based service tend to be more expensive just given the cost of operations is higher. But we thereby still see about 3/4 of our revenue coming from the cars business and about 1/4 of the revenue coming from our three-wheelers and two-wheelers. But that is changing rapidly.
Yeah, because I was just, it's interesting because you're saying that cars are giving you 3/4 of your revenues roughly and still not yet fully recovered. And there are changes in the way people are behaving, especially in terms of office commutes. And you have low-cost mobility growing so fabulously. So does that mean that strategically you're going to reallocate the resources behind these two categories? I mean, low-cost and cars?
Look, we need to step back, Anuradha. What are we trying to build? We are trying to build a mobility solution for the next hundreds and millions of users in India. So all our resource allocation is actually talking to that. And the future growth will come from the length and breadth of the country, from segments we have actually not catered to in the past. So that's why we see three-wheelers and two-wheelers actually continue to get a significant share of the investments we make, because these are categories which are still very nascent. We are in the process of getting more drivers and riders to the platform. We'll continue to invest behind new experiences on the core cars business. So for example, As we speak, we have scaled up our rentals and intercity service within the cars portfolio. So we are beginning to see further differentiation within the traditional categories also. So our investments are very much on tech, resourcing on all the products, but I do anticipate the future will involve Uber looking far more different from than what you have known it in the past. We'll have three-wheelers, two-wheelers, we'll have buses. We have recently actually launched a pilot for buses in one of the cities, and we hope to scale that up.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that, because the way things are going, I think our cities will require more public transport and will require a lot of car users to start taking public transport, right? So talk to us a little bit about that pilot.
Anuradha, we at Uber fundamentally have three core theses. We believe that shared mobility is the path forward for India, where we need to challenge fundamentally private ownership of vehicles. To encourage shared mobility, we also need to thereby make services available at price points which are affordable and in a way which consumers are used to using services. That's why we are taking the same technology and now deploying it in high capacity vehicles or buses. So what we have done now is in select cities, more recently in Gurgaon, we are running a couple of pilots. One of them is with the Gurgaon Municipal Development Authority, where we are taking the buses which are owned by the local authorities and making them available on the Uber app. So these are air-conditioned buses. You get to pre-select the seat. You have a pre-booked seat. You can see the ETAs the same way as you can see for other services on the Uber app. And we do believe this will fundamentally encourage some consumers to go back to using public transport in a big way. We're also running other combinations of these pilots, for example, for corporates, where certain corporates post-pandemic told us that they would like to have the flexibility, the safety, and affordability of an Uber service, but they would like to make sure that they move consumers, their employees, from home and workplace in bigger vehicles. So we are actually running a bunch of pilots around that. I would imagine that if we kind of fast forward 5 years from now, the way I'm speaking about three-wheelers and two-wheelers becoming a very large part of the portfolio, I do anticipate we will see that happen in other parts of the portfolio, including buses. This continues to be a market which pushes us to innovate, and some of these innovations are now being taken global, and that's why India is such a special part of the Uber ecosystem, not just as an incredibly powerful market, but for what we are doing and building here.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the cash payments was an India innovation. You had to do it, right, for India. So India makes you, and Indian consumers and customers make people have to rethink and customize the solutions that are being offered in this market. Surge pricing is something that has constantly been debated and talked about. We know the CCI, the Competition Commission of India, earlier this month has asked you guys, all you guys, to be more transparent and self-regulate. We know that the Consumer Affairs Ministry is also, you know, weighed in on this. What is the transparency that you can offer customers when it comes to surge pricing? Because that seems to be something, no matter what the convenience that you'll offer, surge pricing seems to be a trade-off that we are not willing to come to terms with.
Anuradha, we are in our 9th year of our operations now. I don't think across the ecosystem, from riders, drivers, regulators, and the wider influencers in the ecosystem, there's a very deep appreciation and understanding of what dynamic pricing does. At the end of the day, what we are trying to do is match pools of demand, which is deeply variable, and pools of supply, which also tends to be deeply variable, which has multiple other choices. And thereby the pricing is a balancing factor which plays out. The two core theses we have already deployed. One is we are actually already providing one of the most transparent pricing mechanism. For example, today versus say 10 years back when ride-hailing apps didn't exist, when you open the app, you actually get a estimation of the fare from point A to point B to the second decimal on the app. Second, for some reason, because the route was different or there was a change in the pricing through the trip, you have avenues which are where within a 24-hour window, somebody will be available through an in-app request to respond to any queries you may have. Third, there is a very clear transparency in terms of, in all the cities we operate in, we make sure that we are compliant with the local regulations. So each city tends to have specific pricing criteria which we adhere to across the board. So I do think this is now a core part and a core acceptance of the ride-hailing category. I think the feedback when it comes from multiple other authorities, we continue to engage and work on that. I do believe that now we have reached a stage where even other industries, for example, Indian Railways, are
using dynamic
pricing. It has been a part of the hospitality industry, airlines industry for time immemorial.
So when the Competition Commission of India says we would like self-regulation in surge pricing and transparency on this front, what could it be? What could you offer as a premier ride-hailing service in this country? What could you offer?
It is too early to comment on the specifics of what the Competition Commission has recommended. We have actually engaged in the process, so it's not been a unilateral recommendation. We are evaluating the recommendations and we'll work on that. And we'll continue to iterate. Look, what we do today, how the Uber app looks and feels today, as we spoke about, is so different from what it was a few years back. And we'll continue to iterate and improve. And we're pretty confident that all these inputs will help us become a far better and far more efficient and loved service. And as we get to serve the next 100 million consumers, the only way they will embrace us is if there is transparency, if we walk through on our promise of reliability and safety.
What will take you on the path to 100 million? How far are you from 100 million and how many years and who's going to get you to 100 million?
It is an ongoing journey.
For
those of who know me, they know that I avoid crystal ball gazing, but we are on an accelerated path to having 100 million active consumers on the platform. These will come from length and breadth of the country, not just from the top 7 to 8 cities. We are already in 120 plus cities in the country, and we are expanding that network. In fact, we're launching cities where the first product might be a 3-wheeler or a 2-wheeler based service, because that is what is a better product market fit for those geographies. What we're also doing is focusing on 2 or 3 core investments. For example, we are finding ways to partner with other players in the ecosystem. So for example, we recently done a partnership with Amazon and with WhatsApp. With Amazon Prime, it's about being able to tap into the high-paying e-commerce user and encourage them to actually upgrade to better experiences because they have the privilege of being part of the Prime membership. At the same time, we're partnering with WhatsApp to do, again, a very India-first innovation.
So you don't download the app?
Don't download the Uber app, right? Because some of our consumers said that I'm actually comfortable using WhatsApp. My parents don't want to download another app. How do you, but I still want to give them the option of booking an Uber themselves. So we are actually running, after a successful pilot in Lucknow, we now launched the service in Delhi, where through the WhatsApp interface, you can request for an Uber and the same experience will flow through. All of this is being built in India, for India, by India-based engineering teams.
And you do a revenue share with WhatsApp and,
combination
Amazon
of
Prime. Is that how it works?
So it's a combination of commercial constructs because this is win-win for multiple platforms. And it's not just, these partnerships are not just limited to what we're doing on the demand side. We're also on the supply side. At the end of the day, for us to provide a service, we need to have more vehicles and drivers on the platform. So for example, recently, we brought to India one of our largest mobility fleet partner from Middle East and Africa to India, a player called Move, which is committing to putting thousands of new vehicles of different form factors, which will then allow us to provide different experiences to consumers. We are also partnering in the sustainability ecosystem, recognizing that it is shifting very quickly. How do we innovate in bringing the right quantum of electric and hybrid vehicles on the platform? So that we can see how the economics of those works on ride hailing, so that eventual adoption by drivers can be accelerated.
Welcome back on Media Dialogues. I'm talking to Prabhjeet Singh, the president of Uber India and in charge of the mobility business for Uber in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka as well. Prabhjeet, you're one of 2 large players in this country. Between Uber India and Ola, I'm guessing you'll have the market to yourselves largely, even though there are other players. The question is, what is the brand distinction today? Because let me speak to you now as a customer. I use Uber Go and Ola Mini very, very frequently for my office commutes, okay? And I find that the drivers invariably offer both the services, right? So they have both the apps. So it doesn't matter to me at the end of the day that driver exchange doesn't really give me a brand experience because it could be Ola or Uber. So how does the brand stand out? Why is the brand distinct? What are you relying on to create a brand experience?
When it comes to brand, we believe that the brand promise will follow the service promise. The service promise has 3 pillars: affordability, safety, and reliability. We need to make sure that we are providing and meeting the consumer expectations on all three. And that is what will make the difference in when you open, and you have a choice, and you will have choice of not just one app, but you will have choice of multiple apps. It's a very competitive market. Why you should choose Uber will be if you know that each time when you request the vehicle comes on time. If there's an issue, you are able to resolve it through support. And it is a price which you are comfortable with and which is predictable. Now, we are very much obsessed with getting the core service quality right. The brand promise further amplifies the core service promise. And for us, our brand promise gives us the real edge when we combine the global brand which Uber stands for, which is stands for an inclusive, enabling brand, which really ignites opportunities for millions of drivers and earners and millions of consumers, and combine that with the core ethics and the core ethos of India. So, for example, recently we did a pretty big campaign to promote our three-wheeler and two-wheeler service. It was a campaign which was inspired by real-life stories of consumers. Not consumers necessarily like you and I, but consumers who use this service. They are inspired by stories of, for example, a bride who wanted to find a way to obviously fulfill her professional commitments combined with her personal commitments.
So, Prabhjeet,
I think that brand comes together in a very, very unique.
So that's the communication of the brand. But the experience of the brand, if the cars at the end of the day are shared between different apps, and if the apps have more or less similar interfaces and technologies, how does it really matter to me whether I'm driving Uber or Ola, and should that not matter to you?
At the end of the day, the drivers and the service they are providing is face of Uber. We are the technology which is only empowering them. So there are two ways we are looking to address that. Anuradha, the first thing is we consistently believe that choice which the drivers have is something we absolutely embrace and celebrate. We don't put any constraint that the driver has to drive only on Uber, etc., etc. I think that is what the core proposition of a gig work and independent work is. But what we are beginning to see, and this is where I would urge you to each time ask that question to the driver, the same driver, because of the standards which the Uber platform is setting, because it's a community of drivers and riders, we set very explicit standards and expect certain service quality. Often we expect the same driver to behave differently. Make sure that they are following those standards and guidelines. I don't want to comment on other competitors in the market. And that is which plays out in a combination of technology solutions and operations solutions which we have rolling out. I'll give you a simple example. We are running a pilot in some of the cities on how do we make sure that the driver has full visibility on where the trip is, where the destination for the consumer is. We are also working on multiple ways to make sure that the driver gets compensated for long pickups. If our technology is able to make the estimate more accurately, the driver consistently will want to then drive with us. He or she will then want to make sure that when a consumer from Uber comes, the experience is actually far better than on any other platform. The driver also knows that we have his or her back. So the driver knows that if there is a conflict for whatever reason, there is a argument, there will be support channels available to them. So I think combination of these factors. The other thing which we also do with drivers is, for example, invest in their well-being, which, for example,
I know you've done gender sensitization and eye testing and vision support for drivers. So are you saying, Prabhjeet, that if I book the same car and driver via Uber versus another app, I will get a different experience?
We aspire for that, Anuradha. This does not happen all the time, but through the processes of the way we engage with the drivers, we actually spend crazy amount of time listening to drivers. So, for example, we have a driver advisory council. These are 40 drivers across 6 cities who meet us periodically. They look at what is being developed as product solutions, give us feedback, we incorporate. We hold listening sessions. We often drive ourselves. I, for example, every 6 months take the wheels myself and drive to get feedback. And then we work to make the driver experience better. And these small iterations which we keep doing make an incredible difference eventually.
Create the Uber brand as distinct from the others.
And that's why you can see that shows up in terms of why we have been able to kind of scale our business, why we've been able to today attract a much larger proportion of drivers and riders than any other platform in the market.
The amount that you take from the drivers is pretty much uniform between both the both the market leaders, and even the transactions are the time duration you take to settle transactions is the same. So for them, I'm curious about what the incentive would be.
And Anuradha, I think exactly to a consumer, what you see is only 1% of what happens, which is what happens in the physical world. Sure. Behind the scenes, remember, Uber is operating in more than 60 countries. We have upwards of 3 million drivers globally, which means we are constantly iterating our products and services. There's an innovation in Latin America, which we have found working great. We quickly bring it to India, the same way we take innovations from India to global markets. And that makes our scale a real strength. We are able to then create different experiences on all these factors across the board. And that's why you can see that also in the pace at which we are growing in the market.
We know that in India, you have large teams working that are supporting the tech operations for Uber in many parts of the world. So Uber globally. Give me a sense of what that, how that works.
So Anuradha, India is not just an incredibly exciting long-term market for us. It's also a source for innovation where things being piloted in India are being taken globally and a very large talent hub. We have more than 2,200 employees in India. Majority of them are actually engineers who are building end-to-end tech solutions for the world. There are 13 different programs which are being supported from our Bangalore and Hyderabad tech centers. We are accelerating our hiring in the country for engineers. And they are not just working on micro solutions which are not visible. They actually got full end-to-end responsibility. So for example, high-capacity vehicles we spoke about. The entire tech stack is being built in India. We spoke about WhatsApp to Ride, which is, again, a global first innovation. The entire solution, the user experience, the data science work, the core product design is happening by our tech leadership and tech teams in Bangalore and Hyderabad. So you'll expect that this will lead to a benefit for the India market, of course, but also the power of Indian tech talent, which is just incredible, will become a real source of competitive advantage for us globally.
Right. Prabhjeet, I'm going to have to let you go, close this here. I know, there's so much to talk about, gig workers, drivers, employees. I know globally that debate is on, but we'll park that for another time, I think. Thank you very much for coming into our studio here in Mumbai, and I wish you and the entire team at Uber a lot of good luck.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for watching. Look out for another conversation that looks at business through the top-line lens on Media Dialogues here on CNBC TV 18.